Kalofalahiatu and welcome to our bulletin for BCN News. Leading our news tonight, the government is calling on all residents to be prepared to implement the health and safety precautions to protect against COVID-19 that has been promoted for the last 2 years, leading up to the quarantine-free travel that will occur on the 27th of June. Here's more on that story.
Acting Secretary to Government and Director General of Health and Social Services, Gayleen Tasmania, was on News of the Week radio program last Friday to explain what this means when passengers will arrive into the country and not be required to isolate.
We've also got the website. So if you go on www.covid19.gov.nu, there is an application form or a contact under RIF Resources. We have a contact form, and you fill that form out with all your details. And one of the information that's in there is asking about previous infection. If you have been infected with COVID-19 within the last 3 months. And what that does is you can then apply for a waiver of the pre-departure test, because we've seen passengers come through who don't declare that they had COVID-19, and we test for PCR here, which is the most sensitive type of test, and we pick up fragments of the virus. And we have to determine whether this is an active virus or not an active one. And so if we get you as a positive here, if you had already disclosed to us that you had it previously, and it's possible that this is a historical case, then we don't have so much to worry about. And for an example, on every flight, we've had historical cases come through, but we already knew that information because people disclosed it to us earlier. So it's not to say that you will be stopped from coming because you've had COVID. It's just that if we test you here, alarm bells don't ring because we know it's an historical case.
Meanwhile, on the government's COVID-19 dashboard, since the pandemic started 2 years ago, only 9 cases were detected on the island and all were eliminated at the border. As of the 20th of this month, 99.4% of the population 12 years and over have been double vaccinated, and 93% of the population 18 years and over have received their booster vaccine. This figure should increase after the young people 16 to 18-year-olds took their booster vaccines on Tuesday this week.
The government needs to improve its support of relocation programs for the villages on the west coast of the island was one of the key discussions at the National Consultations on Climate Mobility held over the past 2 days.
Village council representatives joined NGOs and government departments to discuss the human security implications of climate change and mobility. One of the main discussions was on the government's 2008 coastal development policy. The Director of Utilities, Clinton Chapman, says that this policy identifies the red zone, the lower terrace on the west coast of the island, as not suitable for development, a decision made by the government after the severe destruction of Category 5 Cyclone Hatta in 2004. In the hope of enticing people to relocate to the upper terraces, the coastal policy sets conditions, though, that will free the government from any liability should another major cyclone destroy new buildings on the lower terrace. Chairperson of the Alofi South Village Council, Robin Heko, said that the government needs to help establish some of these new relocation sites for families to relocate to, because the costs the government's utilities departments like power and water are charging are very expensive. The Director of Utilities, Clinton Chapman, agrees that there are gaps in this coastal policy. But there are examples of the relocation of families after Cyclone Hatta. Some families from the village of Alofi North relocated to the top terrace at full. Charlie Tohovaka from the village of Makefu said that for the elderly like himself, they will likely remain on the lower terrace because they are established there. But he is encouraging his children and grandchildren to move and build on the upper terrace if and when they are ready to build their homes. The national consultation was organised by the National Disaster Management Office in a 2-day exercise facilitated by consultant Jamal Vidriaki.
The first of 14 village UV water treatment systems installed at the Tamakotonga Community Hall was opened by the Director of Utilities, Clinton Chapman, and the New Zealand High Commissioner, Helen Tana, this week on Monday. As the island remains on boil water notice, the Water Supply Division will be addressing the water quality issues of each village through a series of tasks such as fixing leaks and cleaning water bores and tank sites. Here's more on that story.
BCN News spoke with Director of Utilities Clinton Chapman to explain the water treatment unit installed at Tamakotonga.
As everyone knows, we have a boil water notice still in effect for all the villages except for Hakupu. So these units, we just brought them in from New Zealand to treat the water, and the community comes and collect the water at this particular site in Tamakotonga at the community hall. And that sort of applies also to the other remaining villages. We've installed 5 so far. So these units will treat the water to a good drinking water standard. At the moment, if you drink the water from the tap, it won't, it's not going to cause you too much harm, but just to be safe, we have put this system in place for those that are less healthy when drinking water that's not quite so good.
It is the first of 14 village systems to be installed with the funding support of $28,000 from the New Zealand High Commission.
We've installed Toapa, Namukulu, Lakapa, and Tamakotonga, and Mutalo as well. So we just got to finish off some few things there, the power supply, for example, and some of the tap fittings. But they're pretty much in operation by the end of the week. So that will help those communities. In Lakapa, they're the one that we're especially worried about because of the high readings in coliforms that we found out at the beginning of the year. So Lakapa can start using their system by the end of the week.
A further 20 treatment units have been funded by the Niue Reach to Reef project, which will be primarily installed at government buildings and premises. The funding of $130,000 also included purchase of hardware to address the quality issues in the water supply system in Niue. Clinton told BCN News that while they are working on installing the UV water units, they will also be working on water maintenance in each village.
We put the systems within a cabinet because the UV lamps produces a light that's harmful to your eyes, so we encourage people not to touch the system or fiddle with it in any way until we secure every single site with a cabinet like we see here in Tamakotonga.
The advice is still given to the community to collect drinking water from the UV treatment water systems located at Niue High School, Niue Primary School and Commercial Centre, and the drinking water collection point in the villages where the system are installed.
3 members of the New Zealand Defence Force arrived on the island a week ago. The Freeman team will be undergoing a few projects through a 1-week period, working on a few public facilities off the island. BCN News was able to speak with the team and the New Zealand High Commissioner Helen Tana yesterday afternoon. Tropic Twilight is a yearly project that takes place throughout the Pacific, funded by the New Zealand government. Due to the COVID-19 2 years ago, the project was postponed, but this year the contingent will be commencing on the project on Niue, says New Zealand High Commissioner Helen Tana.
New Zealand Defence Force is here for a reconnaissance visit for exercise Tropic Twilight. That's a humanitarian exercise that we run in the Pacific every year. This year it's scheduled for Niue. It involves the Defence Force coming in working on some public facilities, usually in the social services like education or health, and it's funded by the New Zealand Development Program. They'll be bringing in tradespeople and having a look at some of the schools and buildings and the likes that they might be working on.
Our main focus will be here at the high school, fixing up the science lab, doing a few other small jobs like working on the hall and the ablutions, getting them up to speed.
A contingent of 41 members of the New Zealand Defence Force will be arriving in July, including some from the New Zealand Army, potential divers from the Navy, plumbers, combat engineers and plant operators. New Zealand Defence Force Liaison Officer Kendall Finlay spoke with BCN News yesterday to explain the project they will be working on.
And so us and the people we work with are coming back in start of July for a 3-week period, and during that we'll be doing some of the work on the schools, and some of our secondary tasks are hospital and some places in town as well.
Meanwhile, the Freeman team are enjoying life on the island and looking forward to exploring the beautiful island of Niue after their tasks are completed. A special ceremony was held at the Fonuakula government building yesterday afternoon to bestow permanent residency status on 11 people from other countries who migrated to Niue and decided to make Niue their home. It was an emotional and momentous occasion welcoming the new residents of Niue.
Director of Immigration Kim Ray Vaha congratulated the permanent residents for the decision to make Niue their home and for abiding by the laws of the country, and after 10 years they have attained their permanent resident status. Minister of Immigration Crossley Tatui welcomed the new permanent residents, handing out the certificates witnessed by their families and friends. Also there to witness the momentous occasion for these new permanent residents was Premier Dalton Tangilangi and Minister Esa Mona Ainu. It was an emotional day for the new residents as they expressed their gratitude and heartfelt emotions to those who have sponsored them and the people of Niue. BCN News spoke to some of the new residents, including Joe Boy Solano, who has been working in Niue with Kanu, to share how they felt.
Very elated, and of course, besides being really felt welcome when I first got here, it increased 1,000-fold. So I've grown to love Niue from the first, and then I fell in love with it more. So
the new residents of Niue are looking forward to continue their contributions to the development and prosperity of the island.
The National Council of Women celebrated 60 years of its anniversary at the Makini Hall in Alofi last Friday. It was a beautiful day for the women as they remembered the journey of the Niue women since the club first began. Here's more on that story. The formal program began with a few words of wisdom and blessing by Reverend Maria Langiano, followed by a few speeches given by National Council of Women President Nungi Pomale. The National Council of Women began in 1962 as the Niue Women's Interest Club, according to Mahetoe Hiko's history presentation. A total of 50 women currently make up the National Council of Women, says Nungi Pomale. In her speech, Gayleen Tasmania spoke of the ongoing and developing role and representation of the Niue women in Parliament, such as herself. Honourable Tongatule announced that the government has gifted $10,000 for the Council of Women Jubilee anniversary. The club has evolved over time, but still continues to embrace, uplift, and nurture the talents, skills, and embodiment of the Niue women. Last week, BCN received a copy of a court application filed by NISCA President Maru Talangi to the Niue High Court. BCN and 2 others were named in the application filed on the 5th of May, calling on the Niue High Court to order BCN to immediately remove all posts mentioning NISCA. Here's more on that story.
The court has not yet made a determination on the NISCA application. Meanwhile, the Niue Lawn Bowls President Des Hipa last week submitted the petition to remove the current NISCA executive to the Minister of Sports, Honourable Sauni Tongatule, and the NISCA President Maru Talangi. The petition was signed by 64 people from the various sporting codes to remove the current NISCA executive. According to Mr. Hipa, the minister has not responded, but Hipa says that he understands that the government cannot intervene in the matter. The NISCA executives were given Monday 4 p.m. this week to respond to the proposal given to remove the current executive members from their positions. However, there was no response. A meeting between all the Sports Codes Committee took place yesterday afternoon at the Niue Lawn Bowls to establish a new national sports body.
According to a press release issued by the Niue Police Department on Tuesday this week, they had received a report of a heavy vehicle incident that took place last Wednesday afternoon at the bottom of Tapeu Hill in Alofi South when it sidetracked from the main roadway. The police determined the heavy vehicle to be a roller occupied by a single driver. The driver sustained minor injuries and was transported to the Niue Fo Hospital by police, where he was treated and released later in the afternoon. The police are still investigating the incident and are grateful nobody was seriously injured in the incident. The Vaya by-election has now confirmed its successful candidates for their village council. Chief Electoral Officer Darren Tohovaka issued a public notice last Thursday confirming the candidates who are now duly elected to the office of the village councillor. The successful candidates include Mary Talaisi, Meleta Talaisi, Takala Talaisi, and Tuaitama Talaisi. And before we end our news bulletin, a friendly reminder that tomorrow will be the official opening of Whalefono 2 in Halamahanga. An open invite to all residents of Niue to come along and enjoy the event of the day. And that is our news bulletin for this evening. Do join us again next week for more of our news and local bulletin. Until then, wishing you all a very happy weekend. Kia munui.